Oh, we already have a comment in the chat.
We do.
Oh, yes.
See, I told you it would be a hit.
It is. A special friend sent this to me.
I love it.
I say we start.
Okay, let's get started. So welcome to Slice and Dice with the Dean. And for those, I think all of you know me, but just in case I haven't met you before, I'm Dr. Denise Boots. I'm the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education in the School of EPS, and I'm a professor of public policy. Today we are going to be making a family recipe, slightly modified by myself. This is New England corn chowder. And so I had sent out an ingredient list. I'm going to kind of go through that and go through the prep just to make sure. Some of you may be cooking with me. Some of you may be planning to be cooking this at a later date. And so I thought maybe to start, we would kind of go through just the prep that got us to this point. So let me grab my recipe. Okay, so for New England corn chowder, this is a really traditional dish, and it is a great sharing dish. It's wonderful when it's cold outside. Today it decided to be 70 degrees here in Dallas, but it's been chilly, and so it's an easy dish to make as far as the ingredients are kind of basic, but together they're magical. So you're gonna do about 3 pounds of gold or russet potatoes. You're gonna peel those, and so I have examples of everything. These are the gold potatoes. So these are a little bit golden when you peel them. They've got a slight buttery flavor to them, but you can use any kind of potatoes. So red potatoes you can also do. Some people completely peel them or they leave a little bit of the skin on. For the potatoes, that's fine. And then russets, you want to peel all the way. You don't want that skin in your chowder. And so I cut mine into smaller pieces. Sorry, my husband's sitting down. So this is my stock pot, and you can see I've already gone ahead and I have peeled those potatoes and I boiled them. They're not crumbly, right? They're cooked, but you don't want them to the point where you overcook them and they don't have any form left. And then you also are you've cut up at this point a giant sweet onion. I actually do 2 sweet onions. We love the onion in the chowder. It gives it a great flavor. And then you have cooked at least 1 pound of bacon. Let me just make a comment about the bacon. I don't believe there's no such thing as too much bacon. So I'm not sure how you all feel about that. You can put comments in chat, by the way, at any time, or if you have questions as we go through. But bacon is the secret ingredient in many ways of this dish. And so I like to use the thick cut bacon, but you could use any bacon you want. So you'll see on my cutting board, we're going to be cutting that up in a moment. I actually did a double batch for my chowder today. And so I have 2 pots. I have one smaller pot that I'm going to bring to our neighbors, and then a giant pot that we're going to keep for ourselves tonight. So you've cooked your bacon and you've put that grease to the side. And so here's my bacon grease, right? And so it's sitting in there.
Can I interrupt for a minute here? So Dr. Boots, are you one of those people who collects bacon fat?
I do not collect bacon fat. I like everything fresh, but I know people that do that because really bacon fat in itself, fat is lard, right? Fat is flavor. But I don't collect bacon grease normally and keep it somewhere. I'm always afraid of something spoiling, but I know people that do that. Do you do that, Dr. Holmes?
I do not, but I know there's at least one of us among us who does. And I did not know that I should be keeping my little gold. So I will save it for this. I will use for this, but next time I'll save it for cornbread and things like that.
Yeah, cornbread it's magical in cornbread. Oh yes, and I know who you're talking about. Yes, bacon grease is magical too. So, so I cooked up 2 pounds, a little over 2 pounds of bacon today. And so I saved all that grease and we're going to use some of that. And so for the bacon, I had said, kind of important, you don't want to make it, if you're that crispy breakfast bacon person where you like it kind of well done, dark black, that's not what you want for a chowder necessarily. You want it well cooked, but not black. That's okay.
Did I do all right?
Black. you know, where it's so crunchy that it's kind of like on the ragged edge of a Texas barbecue. You know what I mean? You want it where it's well cooked, right? But some of that fat is still in there because that fat is going to give your chowder flavor, if that makes sense. And then you were to get some cream corn. And so cream corn, you just buy vegetable aisle, cream corn. Again, some of this is to taste. So I'm going to have at least four cans of cream corn in my chowder. We like a lot of corn, but all of this you can kind of customize. If you like more bacon, do more bacon. If you like more corn, you do more corn. Same with the potatoes. So some of this is how hearty you want your chowder to be, if that makes sense. And then you're going to have 1 to 2 gallons of milk, either 2% or whole. I actually many times use both. I'll use a gallon of whole milk and kind of 2% to add to that. We usually drink 2%, so whole milk is kind of a treat. Like I only usually do that when I'm baking or cooking. And then-
Dr. Boots? Can you use whole kernel corn?
Yes, okay, and so that's a secret, Betsy, but yes. And so that's an addition. So I also, kind of as a secret, I add into my corn chowder whole corn, and I like the frozen corn, and I love the white corn in particular because it's so sweet. And so I will add some of this into my chowder today. So I do the cream corn, which gives it a lot of flavor, and it also goes through, you know, through the whole chowder. But adding some whole corn is also a really good thing, and it makes your chowder just a little more hearty. So this is white corn that I just took out of the freezer. And I like the frozen, but you can use canned. I prefer the frozen because it's a little less preserved. So you have a little less of the salt preservatives, and they flash freeze them. And so it's a nice firm corn, if that makes sense. So yes, that is a definite thing that you can add.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
If you say had a vegetarian, what would you do if you were going to leave the bacon out?
That means more butter. So when you lose the bacon, you're going to add more butter. So know that for a chowder, much of the flavor for the chowder comes from the fat in the chowder. And so when you boil your onions and your potatoes, though, that is also, you're putting savor right into your chowder. And that's the reason I told y'all to boil your onions, because those onions are flavoring those potatoes. And when we add the milk and the salt and the butter and the bacon, if you're not a vegetarian, all of that's going to come together and it's all going to meld together. So the sweet onions that have flavored the potatoes, all of that's going to come together. That's what makes your chowder taste so good. Awesome. So you definitely can make it vegetarian by not adding your bacon and adding like another stick of butter to that.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good question. So at this point, we've done all of that, right? We've cooked our bacon, we've got our grease on the side. So now I think we're ready to cut up our bacon, and I'm going to show you how to combine all the ingredients so that we can start. The most critical point of your chowder is about to happen. And this is when we add that milk to the chowder and we start bringing it up to temperature. And this is the secret about milk chowders, is that if you scald that milk, you have wasted that chowder. So when you heat it, it is absolutely important. You're going to babysit your chowder. You're going to stay with it. You're going to mix it all the time. My husband can attest to what happens. He's laughing right now. Let's say hi to Barry, shall we? Let's talk about Barry. What happened a couple of weeks ago when we made this?
Barry didn't mix the chowder.
And what happened to that chowder?
I scalded the chowder.
He scalded the chowder. We threw that chowder away. It died. And so that's what he was giggling on the side.
So are you a wooden spoon stirrer, or do you stir with something else?
So if you have a nonstick pan, I would recommend that you have a silicone utensil like this one so that you're not scratching your nonstick. But I have an enamel pan. Let me pan over to here. So this is my enamel stock pot. So this is a Rachel Ray stock pot. It is giant, as you can tell. But I love it because it holds heat and it distributes the heat very well. With that being said, I'm making 2 pots of chowder. And so my other pot is actually a nonstick. And so this is already ready to go. I'm going to add some other things into it and show y'all as I go through. And so for this one, I would probably use the silicone. For my enamel, I actually try to use, you have to use it depends how deep your pot is too, right? But I love wood spoons because they allow you to really get on the bottom and put some pressure on the bottom to pull up potatoes or onions or other things that might be sticking, that might be burning. And then I also have this really long ladle. I like this because it has holes in it. So it allows me to stir the chowder and really pull all the ingredients through each other on the bottom. So I use both. This is a nice long ladle, so it comes in handy. Good questions though. But you never want to scratch your nonstick. Scratch your nonstick, it'll get into your food and you'll be eating nonstick coating. So that's always the challenge there. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do to kind of complete the chowder, I've got my potatoes and onions sitting on the stove. I've got a second batch ready to go. I've got my cream corn on the side. I've got my whole corn, salt and pepper. I am a big believer in fresh cracked pepper. There's a big difference with fresh cracked pepper versus store-bought pepper, but you can definitely use both. And so this is my fresh cracked pepper. And then for salt, I'm also a huge fan. This is Himalayan pink salt. So if you have a salt grinder, and you can buy salt grinders at the store, they're relatively inexpensive that are self-contained. Exactly. So I have salt grinder and I have pink Himalayan in this. And I also have other exotic salts I actually keep next to my stove. Because they all have different flavors. So for example, we went to Iceland a few years ago and we actually got black salt.
Wow.
And so I have like, so they're fun. And you can put these right into your chowders. You don't have to grind them because they will eventually, they will melt down. But I like to grind everything because I just don't want to take, I don't want to take a chance that somebody gets like a whole piece of salt. That would be bad. So, but I have salts always right next to the stove and I use them all the time. So I've already ground up into, just so you can see the color. This is that pink Himalayan. It's actually like it's just got a tint to it. And these are not as strong as iodine salts. Your regular table salts, you can put a little bit more in, but different salts have different strengths to them. So don't equate 1-to-1 on salts. Depending on the salts you use when you cook, it will dramatically change the flavor. So I always warn people, like we'll do a little bit of salt, we'll see how that tastes because you can always add more salt. But if you over salt your dish, hard to always make that unsalted. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do now to finish the dish out is we are going to cut out. So I've got my chunky bacon. Can y'all see that well, hopefully? Yeah. And so you want to make this, you want to cut this into bite-sized pieces. You don't have to dice it or anything like that. And it can be a little bit big, but you want them manageable on a tablespoon is the goal. And so you cut them all up. And then you're going to add that to your chowder base where your potatoes and your onions are. And that's all I have in that pot right now. There's nothing else in there. So you're going to cut all of this up. Is anybody actually making the recipe besides Dean Holmes? Do we have anybody in the chat that is cooking?
Not that I see it. So am I supposed to have my potatoes and onions and bacon in the pot now?
Yep, you want to have you just want to have if your bacon's already pre-cut, you can go ahead and put that in the pot with your potatoes and your sweet onions.
Okay, awesome.
Exactly right. And can everyone see the consistency of how the bacon's cooked? I'm going to bring one piece in so you can kind of see it. So it's cooked, it's not overcooked, and it's not black. And that allows it to bend a little bit. It's also got some fat left in it. So it's well cooked, but that fat is your flavor. And so you're cutting that up into bite-sized pieces, basically chunky pieces. And then once we get this all cut up, it'll just take me a minute. We'll be putting that in our pot and adding that to our potatoes and onions.
Do I need my bacon fat yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Soon. We're gonna do the solid ingredients first, and then we're gonna add our fats last.
Okay.
And some of that will be based on how big your pot is. So we'll talk about that. Like if you're doing a half batch or you're doing a double batch. And a lot of this is to taste, you know, what tastes good to you. We like bacon in this house. So the hardest part of making corn chowder is the bacon living long enough to make it into the pot. You know, in our house.
Dr. Boots?
Yes.
Does it matter if you fry your bacon on the stove or can you cook your bacon in the oven? Will you get the same result?
So I'm a lover of bacon, of frying my bacon in a pan. But I know people that do it in the oven, and I say that would be fine. You just want to try, if you want that grease, it might be better to put it in a fry pan, right? Because it can be dangerous to be pulling bacon out with grease in the pan unless you have a deeper pan or a special pan that you're able to actually fry it, you know, with, you know, the fry pans that are 2 pieces that allow you to have like a roast, you know, up high and then drainage down below. That would be great as long as you have that grease.
That's what I have. I'll get it out.
Yep, and that would be fine. And I know lots of people that do it that way. You just want to always be careful for people that maybe aren't experienced cooks. There is no burn like a grease burn. And so you want to be really careful with your bacon grease.
Thank you.
Showing your hand, Dean Holmes.
I had to mute it so you didn't hear my great organization in the cabinet.
Okay, so this is all ready to go. I'm gonna wash my hands really quick before I pick it up because I'm a hands-on girl when I cook. Yes, you can use that too, that would be great. Perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna take about 1/3 of this and put this in my second chowder pot. Just so I got enough in there. And now I'm gonna bring the rest of this to my big pot. Okay, so you're gonna put that directly in the pot. I do not put my bacon, I put my bacon right out of the fry pan, right onto the cutting board. You don't need, you want that grease, right? If you're making a BLT, you would want maybe drier bacon. When you're making a chowder, there's no reason to put it on a paper towel or anything like that because you want all of that flavor in your chowder. So that's there. And these are the sweet onions. They're giant sweet onions, and you want to cut those. And those I put in pretty big chunks, right? They simmer down a little bit. And so let's look inside our pot. So now we have our bacon, and then you can see, okay, so, and you can see, so the onions and those potatoes are kind of simmered together. And we're gonna stir all of this up once we get all our ingredients together. So let's pick the next thing and we'll add that in. So our next thing is our cream corn. So you wanna take your cans of cream corn and you're just gonna add those directly into your chowder. I've already done 2.5 cans of cream corn in my second chowder dish, just so you don't think I forgot to put cream corn in there.
You know, when I was shopping the other day, I got the last cans of cream corn.
Super popular at Thanksgiving, right?
Yes.
Luckily, they restocked by this week. I thought about that after. I'm glad we gave it about a week because nobody could have gotten cream corn in the Metroplex, you know, beyond Thanksgiving. And I actually keep cream corn on hand all the time. It's a great side dish to add into stuff. And for those of you that have never used cream corn, I'll show you the consistency of this. It literally is like creamed corn. So it's been a bit pureed. So you've got pieces of corn and a liquid, right? So it's that consistency, so you can see. So now all that's going together, and you can see this is a big pot, and over a quarter of the way full with just yummy stuff. So that's the idea, is you're making a nice hearty chowder. And then I'm gonna also add in some of my pulled pork. And this is frozen, and I took it out about an hour before we started. So you can take it right out of the freezer and put it in, and it will be great.
Are you putting the whole thing in?
Yeah, we love corn, so I just kind of put 2/3 of the bag in the big pot and 1/3 in the small pot. So now we're there. And then we're going to put in now our bacon grease. So let me grab my spoon. There it is. Okay. So here's my bacon grease, right? So it's cooled down from the crazy temperature it was at when I was frying that bacon, which makes this a lot less dangerous to work with. I have burned myself on bacon grease many, many times. We have a relationship together. It's a nasty burn. So if you're not an experienced cook, this is your warning, like respect the bacon grease. It's always easier to work with when it's a little bit less hot. So you can bake you can cook or fry your bacon up in advance and let that grease settle down, and you haven't hurt your recipe in any way. So the reason I'm holding it at this angle is because I want all of kind of the crazy bits to settle on the bottom. And so the grease is up at the top, and I'm gonna ladle in a bunch of this grease into the chowder.
So that seems sad because I like those crunchy bits, but you're telling me not to do it.
It depends on your bits. So it depends what they are. Like for me, I'm gonna show you why I'm not putting it in. Do you see? Mine are kind of burnt.
Okay, look at mine.
Go big. I can't see you. I think those could go in. They don't look super duper fried.
No, they're brownish. They're really a pretty crunchy.
And if they're pretty, put them in. I don't think that you can go wrong. But do you see why I'm not? Because mine
just look a little more burnt.
Yeah, and you don't want burnt anything in your chowder, right? So that's where I stand on that. But again, a chowder is up to taste. And so if you're in love with bacon to the point that you just can't have enough bacon bits, then you could always add that in. I'm
thinking I needed more bacon. You have a lot more than a pound of bacon in there.
Yeah, I put a lot of bacon in my chowder, but I mean, the recipe calls for about a pound of bacon. Okay. If you're a bacon lover like we are, then I don't think there's, like I said before, there's no such thing as too much bacon. And so I added more, and my neighbors love bacon too. Like everybody here loves bacon. And again, if you're a vegetarian, and another thing, if you're new to cooking, you don't want to put grease down your sink. It will clog your sink. So that goes into the garbage. And then now we're going to pull butter. So butter. So it's a 1 stick minimum in chowder. And if you have a chunkier chowder, which I went chunky, right? I've got an extra bacon. I did lots of potatoes. I peeled out 5 pounds of potatoes.
Wow.
And 2 giant Vidalia onions. Like, we like chunky chowder. But again, this is all up to taste. So if you like your chowder more broth and less chunk, then you might do 3 pounds of potatoes, right? We like chunky. So the more the better for us.
Dr. Boots, do you use unsalted butter so that you can control the salt?
That's a great question, Whitney. I actually use salted butter. And the reason is we're putting so much milk into this chowder.
Okay.
That you're gonna need a lot of salt.
Okay.
And you're still gonna be salting after the salted butter. Does
Just,
that make sense?
I use unsalted butter, but that's because I'm not supposed to have a lot of salt.
So I was going to say, if you have salt issues, or you have hypertension, or you're cooking for somebody that has salt issues or needs to, watch their salt intake, you can use unsalted butter. And then you can control how salty that chowder gets but I will tell you that usually if you put 1 stick of salted butter into a chowder dish this big,
yeah,
you're still going to be probably adding some salt for taste.
That makes sense.
It's a lot of milk, right, that we're about to add. It's super exciting. I love when the milk goes in because then you get to see what the chowder looks like.
And so just to confirm, you still haven't turned the heat on?
Nope, I'm about to do that though. But you don't want to turn the heat on until your milk goes in. Otherwise, you're frying potatoes.
Yeah.
Right? Especially once you put the grease in there. Like you're
Yeah.
literally frying things if you add heat. So I'm going to add pepper, and I'm a pepper girl. I don't know how y'all feel about fresh ground pepper, but love pepper. And this is a big pot. So I am turning a lot, and I may put more in after. And now we're about to do a pinch or 2 of salt just to put it in. And then we're going to do a taste test once we start getting this up to temperature to see how much more we need, right? So I'm taking my salt and I'm putting some pinches in because I know I'm going to need that. And I'm going to do that on both sides. Okay. Now I'm going to get my milk, and now it's time we're about to start temperature. So I'm going to start with my whole milk.
At least you don't have a milk thief like I do.
Actually, I do have a milk thief. Her name is Genevieve. She's 12 and she drinks her body weight in milk. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I do. Okay, so I have 2 pots of chowder. So I'm going to share my whole milk with my second pot of chowder. So a gallon of milk goes a pretty long way, but it's a bare minimum of 1 gallon. Now, before I add more milk in, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stir my chowder. And the reason is because I want to kind of see how chunky it is. Like, how much more milk do we want in our chowder? And this is a preference issue. It's not that you're going to do it right or wrong. It's
right.
And I don't know if y'all can see inside my pot very well. Hold on, Barry can bring the camera over closer. But now I'm stirring my chowder. So this is super chunky chowder. So I don't know if y'all can see, maybe higher. There you go.
Now I'm seeing it a little bit.
Are you seeing it? Okay, let me tilt it. Well, I can't because the heat's on. We're getting, let me turn this light off up here. Okay, now you can see it a little bit better. I'll turn that light on and again.
Yeah, that looks good.
So do you see how chunky? This is chunky.
Yeah, that looks good.
It looks good, but there's actually, for our taste, probably not enough milk in here. So we're gonna add more milk in here. Let me stir my second chowder and let's see what consistency it is. And the frozen corn has kind of stuck to everything. And so it's making chunks. Do you see? It's like sticking to the bacon and stuff like that. That will all, as soon as it starts heating up, all of that's going to break apart.
So when you turn the heat on, what temperature are you putting on?
Like, so I
don't have a gas stove, unfortunately.
Yeah, I have a gas stove. And I'm actually going to move that pot. I have 2 power burners on my stove. I don't know if any of y'all have those, but power burners are bigger BTUs on your gas stoves. I'm a fan of gas because you can control the heat much better as a cook. But if you have an electric stove, it's the same process. It's the same thing. I go to medium-high heat. So it's pretty high heat, right? I'm not like at the top, but I'm not far away. But I'm stirring my chowder the whole time. I'm gonna turn the light on.
I guess for me, I go from 0 to 8 and then it has high and low. So I should like be on 6.
Yeah, or 7 or 8, 7 or 8. Yeah, you want to get a little bit of heat into your chowder so that it starts to warm up. But you need to make sure that you're really stirring it and that nothing is sticking to the bottom of your pot. And so if you're new to cooking, where things burn because you forget to go there is the outer edges really well and the dead middle of your pot.
Yeah.
You'll go in circles and you'll sometimes forget the middle of your pot. Barry can tell you how to get scalded milk that is burnt to a crisp to the bottom of an enamel pot off. Why don't you tell him? This is a very helpful hint, actually. Like Google is our friend. Come on camera.
Because I didn't want to have to buy her a new pot.
You're not on camera.
Sorry.
See? Okay.
Because I didn't want to have to buy her a new pot. Salt is a fairly good abrasive that works. I did boil some water in it
And
first,
vinegar.
and a little bit of vinegar and a little bit of muscle. We'll take it out.
That's why you have muscle, right? So he boiled quite a bit of vinegar. It was about 3 attempts to get the boiled burnt milk off the middle of my enamel pot. And so, so positive energy was put out into the universe over my enamel pot. I was quite distraught.
You know, anyone can do that. I almost sacrificed a pot the other day.
Yeah.
So if you do Facebook, there's Jacques Pepin has a Facebook Live channel and a feed, and he just puts out these little things, and he was talking about bell peppers or whatever peppers you have, and eggs, and whatever little bits of cheese or meat you have around. And so I decided to do this, but I don't like runny eggs. So I decided to do the scrambled eggs. Well, of course, you have a little bit of water in there to heat it and soften it up, and it boiled over, and boy, that.
So if you cook enough, you're going to make mistakes in the kitchen. And how I learned to cook, so where this recipe kind of comes from, a little background on the recipe, is I'm from New England. I was born in New Hampshire, and I come from a family of cooks. And my dad in particular and my mom are both excellent cooks, but my dad loves to cook. And he is an amazing, amazing cook. He grounds his own flour when he makes his bread. And so he's a baker, and he makes the most amazing pie crust ever. And so, so we have a bunch of family recipes. And when I got into college, I started buying cookbooks and kind of just playing in the kitchen and trying to have fun. And for me, cooking is fun, and making a meal for 45 people, that for me is fun. Like, I love making big meals. I love holidays. And so this was a recipe
for 45 people
that had been kind of passed down. My grandmother made this dish. And then when I got it, I add a lot more corn than she did, and I add a lot more bacon probably than she did. But it's a true New England dish.
So, Dr. Boots, did I hear you say you've cooked for up to 45 people?
Actually, my biggest Thanksgiving I've ever done is 58 people.
Wow.
Sit down. Yeah. And so that was actually fun for, like, I know it's crazy, but cooking for me is a lot of fun. It's kind of like a therapy, and I have certain dishes that I really love and like enjoy making. So maybe the next time, if we do this again, there's a couple more dishes. I make a really mean beef bolognese, and I make a really good shepherd's pie that is also kind of a traditional New England dish that's pretty easy to make. Bolognese is much more complicated, but shepherd's pie is super easy, and it's great comfort food during the winter.
Well, in the bolognese, you need wine, right?
Uh-huh.
Which might be hard for some of our students to buy. Because I'm sure they could come to the store and say, no, really, I'm cooking with it.
For sure.
That might not work.
For sure. So just a warning, if any of you are heating your chowder right now, you want to be watching your chowder. If it starts to foam, that's a warning on milk. When milk starts to foam, it means you're at a danger point on temperature. And your butter is also kind of a beacon for you. When your butter starts to melt too quickly, that means your heat is too high on your chowder potentially, and you are at risk of burning your milk. So you're watching your chowder, and you know how I know it's starting to melt is when I look down into my chowder, I can see the butter right on the top. I'm going to turn my light off again, just so you might be able to see. I'm starting to see the skin of butter at the top there. That's the buttery goodness that you're seeing starting to melt. And that butter is always going to be on the top of your chowder.
Okay.
Dr. Booth?
Yeah.
Is it better to put your milk and butter in cold so that you can control the temperature versus room temperature?
So my butter had been out for about an hour before I put it in.
Okay.
It really doesn't matter. I wouldn't leave your milk out. There's just too much risk of you forgetting how long it was out and it's spoiling. So I always take my milk right out of the refrigerator, just because I've been known occasionally to get distracted in the kitchen, and you don't want to risk that spoiling. You know, dairy gets kind of funny, but butter is fine at room temperature.
Right.
I know there is like two minds on butter. Some people don't believe that butter should ever be left on a counter, but I was raised in a family where we always had butter on a container on a counter at room temperature.
I think that's regional, right? If you're up in New Hampshire or Minnesota, it's going to get hot in the summer, but it's not Texas, right?
Right.
Like, here's my butter dish. Like, it's always right next to my stove, right? And I've always got room temperature butter because sometimes you need it. And so
that's how I was raised too, but I'm from Wisconsin, so there you go.
Yeah, so I mean, I've met people that think it is sacrilegious for a stick of butter to be left out of the refrigerator. So, I mean, we've had deep philosophical discussions about whether butter should ever be room temperature with some of my friends. So I attack no one, do what you're comfortable with, but my butter was out for at least an hour before we got started today, and I promise you nobody will be poisoned. So it'll be okay. Yeah, for sure. So my chowder is starting to get to temperature on the smaller pot. And I can see that because this is all that's left of my butter. Okay. I'm going to turn my heat down now. I'm going to go a little under medium on that pot. My big pot, it's a lot more milk in there, right? A lot more butter and frozen corn. And so all of that is keeping that temperature a little bit lower. It's going to take a little bit longer. And I know that it's still trying to get to temperature because I still have clumps of frozen corn that has attached to bacon and potatoes. But I'm still watching this really carefully. I'm going to turn my light on for a second just so I can see my chowder really good. But if you're in a smaller pot like you, Dr. Holmes, you're probably getting right there. You want to make sure you're not overheating.
All right, I'll turn it back a little bit.
Yep. It's always better to go slower on your heat up than risk burning your chowder. It's a very, very sad thing to throw chowder away.
Huh. And it's not just the milk and the butter, but you throw away bacon.
No, you throw it's not a good thing. It's a sad, sad day when you have to throw away. And this has happened multiple times. I have burnt chowder. And then gone to the store and bought everything over again because we had to have chowder. So once you decide you need chowder, you need chowder.
So what other chowders do you make? I know you humored me because it's not clam chowder, but what other chowders?
So clam chowder, New England clam chowder. There's a Manhattan chowder that we make. There's also a crab and corn chowder.
What's the difference between New England and
Manhattan? Manhattan is a red sauce base. Okay. It's a red base. And so it's a tomato base. I prefer milk chowders. They're my favorite, just taste. But I mean, I definitely know people that are huge fans of the Manhattan chowders. If you like tomato soups, those are, you know, a Manhattan would be right up your alley. But, and then other kind of, I do a lot of different soups during the winter. I love soups when it gets cold. So we do chilies, we do gumbos, and we also do a lot of like bean soups with pasta or pasta soups. Love them, like a minestrone or a pasta fagioli or something like that. So I'm a big fan of soups when it's cold out with like a nice warm sandwich on the side. And let's talk about that. What can you serve with a chowder? That might be helpful. Yeah. Let me show you what I made for today. So I'll grab it and be right back on camera. So you're gonna have different things that you can serve with chowder, but for today, I made a French bread for today that just came out of the oven. Mm-hmm.
Nice. I have, well, it's not from today, but it's a sourdough soda bread.
Perfect. Sourdoughs are great with soups. You can also do soup bowls with chowders with a sourdough loaf that you buy, and you literally cut it out. I'm sure you've seen soup bowls at restaurants. That's how they do that. And sourdoughs are the preferred bread for that. They have a great crust on them that keeps the soup in. You just want to make sure that you leave enough bread and sides that you don't have a blowout, a soup blowout. Yes, right? So for me, I love the French breads with chowders. I think they're wonderful, like especially a warm bread that's right out of the oven that you can dunk into your chowder. And then let me show you also what we're going to put in our chowder when we serve the chowder. I'm also going to show you the serving bowls, and you can use any bowl, but
yeah, like your chowder bowls are pretty unique.
Yeah, chowder bowls are pretty particular. So let me show you. So there's different options to put in your chowder, and you don't have to have anything with a chowder. The chowder is the meal, right? But I know people that do side salads with them so that they have like something cold with the hot. You can do a fresh spread. You can do a sandwich, like a grilled cheese, or you could do a ham and cheese, a hot ham and cheese. That's also pretty common. People love that with chowders. It's a comfort food dish. And then in the chowder, these are oyster crackers. If you never met an oyster cracker, they're scrumptious and they are wonderful in chowders because they don't get as soggy as fast. So they hold their shape. And they're a great complement in a chowder. You can also do saltines, like we love the wheat saltines. We'll put those in our chowder. And then if you don't have saltines or oyster crackers, you can do a club cracker. You can even do a Ritz cracker, which is like a butter cracker. And those are wonderful in chowders and they add a lot of flavor to them. And so whatever you have for a cracker, it's going to be okay in a chowder. There's no right or wrong way, and depending on the mood and how much I'm in the mood for butter, depends on what kind of cracker goes in our chowders.
So is this, when it cools, is it going to thicken?
It is. It's the chowder itself will not thicken because there's no, the only starch in this chowder is your potatoes, which are a natural starch. So it'll be a little thicker, but as soon as you heat it up, it's going to thin back out. What it will have is a giant butter crust and bacon crust on the top of the bacon grease and the butter. And that is a beautiful thing. Like when you take your chowder out of a fridge after you've had it in there all night, those flavors are continuing to kind of meld together and it's almost better the second day. You want to make sure though that when you ladle into your chowder the second day, you want to get a piece of that butter crust in your bowl before you heat it up. Or if you're going to put it back on the stove, you can heat the whole pot up. Or you could do it in a microwave. Really easy, doesn't hurt your chowder, doesn't change the flavor whatsoever.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, so you do microwave?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the best part of chowder. It's like you don't need to cook for 2 days at least. And it's just a great meal. And how filling it is sometimes determined. I'm not sure if any of you love crackers, but if you're a cracker lover and you want to use a sleeve of Townhouse crackers, I mean, that's going to fill you up really fast. The chowder is pretty hearty. And so
it's got, I mean, mine's still not warm enough, but it's nice.
Yeah, it's getting there. So you want to get it up to a warm temperature, and then we're about to sample our chowder to taste it and find out, like, what do we need for salt and pepper?
Yeah.
Right, that's going to be the next step. And my smaller pot is doing really well. I can see heat coming off of it. So it's getting up to temperature pretty quick. And my big pot is getting there too. I can feel the heat coming off of it, but a slow bring to heat is what we want because we don't want to burn our chowder. Right. So we're getting really close to being there. So I'm going to get a ramekin and we're going to do a taste test here in a second. And this is the best part of like watching somebody cook is that sometimes you get to be the taste tester, right? So my husband gets to be a taste tester a lot.
I love that job.
It's good.
I'm with you.
Barry feels the same way.
Well, and we were thinking, we were chatting about this on the test run, so that we can transition nicely to post-COVID, to doing this with other people.
Yeah, and I would love to do post-COVID. I would love to have some students over to actually be here while I'm cooking and be my live taste testers, and then we have a meal together at the end. And I know we couldn't do that for every student in the school. I don't think I could host all 1,000+ students, but maybe we could do the first 25 students or something that says they want to come or something, that we invite them. I think that would be so fun.
And we could do the dorms too.
That would be fun too.
Could you guys, I don't know, like what the coding is on, or the rules, if you could use a kitchen on campus maybe. And
That's what we're talking about, the dorms. That would be,
oh, okay.
Yeah, we could definitely do that.
And there is, as Betsy knows, there's always risk assessment.
There's a risk assessment for everything. We've got to tell that.
We're willing to do that. I think we could probably do it as early as next fall, is my guess.
Yeah, 100%.
And maybe, depending on how things go, maybe even this spring.
Yeah, the sooner the better. So I'm going to taste test both batches of chowder. So know that if you're doing a double batch, you need to taste both of them and not assume that they both taste the same. So we have 2 ramekins. So Barry Lott, don't eat the whole ramekin. We're going to share. And so I'm going to have him taste the big pot. I'm going to taste the small pot. And then we're going to see what it needs. And then I'm going to taste the big one and he'll taste the small one. And we're going to see where it's at. Salt and pepper needed. Salt and pepper needed. Yep. I put very little salt in to start.
Yeah. Not bad.
So know that the longer your chowder boils, and as it heat, the more the flavors are going to start.
Yeah, I can tell that because I tasted too soon and this is getting better.
Yep. And so you want the heat is what releases the flavors, right? They start to melt together. Yeah. Just like a good sauce, your sauce is never what it's going to be once you've simmered it for a while. It's the same thing with a chowder, with the savory flavors kind of mixing together. So I'm going to put some salt and pepper into both.
Getting there. It's very sweet. It's very sweet.
It is. So the corn gives it a real sweetness, and then the bacon and the onions also, kind of sweet and savory at the same time. And so it's such a good dish. And when you boil potatoes with those sweet onions, the potatoes take on some of the flavor of those onions, which is amazing. The big Vidalia onions have a flavor all their own.
So let's say I wake up tomorrow and I say, I need more bacon.
You can add it.
I can add it, can't I?
You can. So if you have a bacon emergency, if you have pretty much any kind of emergency, that's one of the best things really about chowders. So you want more milk, go get more milk, right? And add it in. It'll be fine. You want to add more bacon, or you were naughty and you ate all the bacon and you fished the bacon out of your chowder, you can fry some more up and just put it in there. It's fine.
Oh yeah.
I like the thick cut bacon, but you can use any kind of bacon. I prefer the thick cut just because I feel like, again, it's a little chunkier in the chowder, And you can see that, like big pieces of potato. That's why I told y'all not to make the potato chunks dice-sized, right? You want big pieces in your chowder, and that's what gives it the hardiness. What questions do you all have, or do you have any? It's a pretty straightforward recipe.
Yeah, it is. Well, I know we need to ask how long it will keep, because you say it's better.
3 days. 3 days. 3 days from when you cook it. So you can have a day 4 of chowder.
Okay.
Like literally. It won't last that long. Chowder is super addictive. This chowder, we eat it until we can't eat it anymore. I mean, chowder doesn't, we don't ever throw chowder away. It gets consumed.
Dr. Boots?
Yeah.
I have a question. Can you freeze it? Does it freeze well?
So I'll be honest, you know, I freeze a lot of sauces and stuff. I would not freeze a chowder. I just don't think milk freezes well. So I would tell you no. I don't think it will be anything like it would be if you consumed it. I just don't think milk freezes well, milk chowders. And I think that they get separated. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I make my turkey wild rice or chicken wild rice soup,
yummy.
I add the cream at the end, but only what we're going to eat. And then you can, but that's broth.
Right, a broth. It's different. I agree.
So, yeah, for that, you can freeze the stuff without the cream and then add cream as you're heating it up.
Yeah. Now you can see heat coming off my chowder. Once I start seeing heat, I'm going to lower my heat down a little bit, right? Because I don't want it to start foaming. When I start seeing foam, I know my chowder is getting heated too fast. So I'm now down around medium heat on the big pot. But I can still, do you see, I don't know if you can see the steam coming out of it. Like there's steam. Yep. And now I'm on kind of low medium heat on my other pot, my small pot. And I did too, because I kind of wanted you to see the difference between making a giant pot and making a small pot. It's really the same. You just have to, you're going to watch that small pot really carefully. It's going to get up to temperature very fast. Mm-hmm. And now you can eat it right away, right? As soon as it's hot. You want hot chowder, never lukewarm. The hotter, the better, where you have not burnt it. But I'll tell you the tip. If you can simmer this for at least an hour, it's going to be so much more flavorful. Mm-hmm. And I have cooked chowder for up to 3 or 4 hours on a stove on low heat, and it has done very well. Someone asked me one time, can you do this in a crock pot? I would be worried about doing it in a crock pot because it is so hard to control temperature. Yeah. So I know crock pots are great. I am a fan of crock pots. Like when I do other soups in crock pots, like I do a wild rice soup that is yummy. And I do that in a crock pot, but again, it's broth based and you don't have to worry about the broth burning. Right. And it's because it's a milk based. You have to be very careful. Plus how long it takes and how the milk just sits there and things aren't getting stirred would make me a little nervous in a crock pot because of the possibility of it souring.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Where the heat's just not getting distributed. So I would tell y'all, don't do this in a crock pot. Like I don't want anybody to get food poisoning or get sick. And I just don't know. You'd have to put it on low heat. And I think it would take so long to get up to temperature. If you weren't there to stir it, I think you have a real risk of either burning it in places or getting sick from having milk out too long where it hasn't been cooked.
Well, mine is looking pretty good. I'm thinking.
Mine is looking really good. So let me bury.
If anything, I need to add more bacon tomorrow, but my bacon is frozen.
Oops.
That would be a real. Oh.
Hold on 1 second.
It would be commitment for me to have to make more bacon.
Yep. So let me show you.
Wait, you switch cameras.
Did it?
Yep.
No. Okay, I guess it did. I don't know what it's doing. Okay, so my webcam.
We're just PhDs. We're not professionals.
Yeah, right, for sure. I'll have the husband look at that. So my chowders are getting really close. My small one is almost up to temperature. And so let me show you your chowder bowls. Like these are traditional chowder bowls. These are great for soups and stuff like that. So we have 2 different kinds. This is the traditional kind that we have that is like a traditional chowder bowl that has, you know, the handle on it. The handles are nice because if your chowder is really hot, it keeps you from getting burnt and having to hug the bowl. right? Which is a problem. So we have chowder dishes. We love them. And then let me show you, I'll grab one of my big chowder bowls. I showed the girls this last night and they laughed, but when you're really hungry, this is another chowder bowl in our house. So
that's a big chowder bowl.
It's a big chowder bowl. I'm not saying that we lifted, you know, it's not filled to the top, but the reason these kind of deep bowls are great is because it allows you to fill your chowder up. Hold on one second. Just go back. Hold on one second, y'all. Sorry. It allows you to fill your chowder up and put that in there, and then you still have room for your saltines or your oyster crackers or whatever, and you're not risking spilling it, because when chowders are hot, they're hot. And remember that milk really retains the heat. Very,
well,
very.
I just love that you can microwave it in the next day. So that makes it so much easier. I would have thought you had to do it on the stovetop.
Nope. And honestly, that's usually how because we heat it up in batches. And so normally what we do is we just ladle out what we want, and that's it. And now I'm going to lower my heat on my big stock pot, because I'm starting to really see like it's getting really hot. So now I'm down to just above low heat. And you can smell your chowder. If it burns, you're gonna know. It smells awful. Have you ever burnt milk? You only do it once. It's serious. Burnt milk stinks to high heaven. When the day that Barry infamously burnt the chowder, the last thing I said is, don't you burn that chowder. Don't you burn that milk. You gotta stir it every 5 minutes. And
every 5 minutes? I think it's more than that.
Well, we were heating up a big batch. Okay. We had a bunch of kids, or all of our kids coming over. And so I had done a double batch. And he was like, yeah, I'll get it. And so I walked in the house after being gone for about half an hour, and the whole house smelled like burnt rubber. Like it smells bad. And he was like, can't you add more milk? Can you save it? And I was like, that's dead chowder. Like, say goodbye to the chowder. So I think we had McDonald's that night. Like it was a tragedy.
That is.
It was, yeah. So this is done. So now I'm gonna put it on low heat, and I'm just gonna I'm gonna stir it, every 10 minutes or so, just making sure nothing is burning on the bottom. There's a lot of heat in that milk. And I'm just gonna stir it up. I'm gonna taste test it again before I serve it up. But know too, that you can always salt and pepper it more in your bowl, right? You don't have to, sometimes it's better to let your people salt and pepper their own thing, but you want it to be enough salt the salt actually helps salt is a flavor enhancer. So you want enough salt in your chowder to kind of enhance all those flavors, but all the flavors are gonna start to mix together under this low heat, and you'll have a great chowder in about an hour. It'll be ready to ladle out. Just a warning, milk holds that temperature for a long time, and there's nothing quite like burning your palate on really hot milk in a chowder. So you want to ladle it out, and sometimes give it just a couple of minutes to air out a little bit before you serve it to your people or yourself.
Dr. Boots, just to let you know, we're right at the hour mark.
Great. We're right there. So hopefully y'all, are there any other questions?
Where is this recording going to be posted?
It's going to be on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
The most famous EPS YouTube channel. So we put all of our videos there. We're getting quite a collection. We were talking about this yesterday. We've gone from never recording stuff and posting it to being quite prolific. So,
and I will say we have 2 more. Let's see, we have 3 more of these at least coming up. So the next one will be Tater Tot Hot Dish, which is a Minnesota standard. It's a classic, and it's also a great thing to do in the winter. And then in February, just in time for Valentine's Day, Dr. Miller volunteered to do a chocolate cake.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I think we'll go back to Dr. Boots with shepherd's pie. And I'm sure Dr. Lanham's going to want to get in there too.
Yeah. fun. I love cooking, and it's nice to be together in something other than a class teams meeting. I know some of my former students in my family violence class are on this call, so I'm tickled pink to see people, and hopefully this has been fun, because it sure has been fun for us to do stuff like this, and it makes us feel more connected, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I know what I'm having for lunch the next few days.
Dr. Boots?
It's a great recipe. Yes, ma'am.
Just to be clear, once you've got this brought up to temperature, as you say, you still need to let it simmer for about an hour before you eat it?
That's what I recommend, about an hour, just to make sure that all the flavors have been released and start to kind of meld together, but on low heat, right? Because that milk is holding temperature. Once you heat it that well, you only need to be on low heat.
So my concern is, I'm cooking on an electric stove.
Yeah.
So what I might do is I might move it to another burner, turn that on low, just so I don't accidentally burn it.
Yeah.
These things don't cool down like yours.
It's a good idea, because with gas, when you turn that heat down, the heat's down. On electric, it holds the heat in the coil for much longer. So that is actually a really good idea.
So I'm going to do that right now, actually.
Yeah. And you can see my chowder is steaming at this point. So let me turn my computer. There we go. So you can see, do you see that heat coming out of it? So this is on low heat now. But remember too, an enamel pan, it holds the heat. It's one of the reasons I cook in an enamel pan when I do chowders, is that unlike a nonstick, which kind of the heat will like heat it up, and then it unheats almost as quickly once you turn it off. It holds it somewhat, but the enamel pan really holds heat, and it's uniform all across the whole pan. So they're great to cook with on controlling your heat temperature. And then you can put it on low because it's really distributing that heat very evenly through the pot.
Yeah, my pot's probably not as good for this. I have an enamel pan, but it's not big enough.
Yeah.
So I just have
this Rachel stock pot was really expensive at the enamel, but I'm in love with my cookware. So I use it. We made lobsters in this thing for my birthday this summer. We had 2 giant lobsters. They were ginormous in here. We've done clams in here. I do all kinds of stews and different stuff in here. I make big batches of spaghetti sauce in here, my red sauce. It's a great pot.
It is a great pot.
Yeah. You can also use the Le Creuset, or I'll show you another pot that this would work for. This is another one. This is like a casserole dish, and it's lower. So you have to be careful because that heat is heating a lot more area at one time. But you could also use something like this for, I make my chilies in this, for example.
Right.
And this is a nonstick, a Rachel Ray nonstick, and it works really well as well.
Nice.
Yeah. So I know we're at the hour. I don't want to keep y'all too late, but it's been so fun. Thank you for the opportunity to cook with you. And I've just so enjoyed it. I love cooking. And I think it's a great way to share, recipes, and we're all cooking more at home maybe than ever before. And some people have been forced to cook, but cooking isn't something to be afraid of. It's something to have fun with, and you can make recipes your own. And so
I say, if you make it, send us a picture of your chowder.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. I would love to see your chowder and who you shared it with. I mean, that to me is why we make big dishes like this. They're meant to share. You share with your neighbors. My neighbors were getting a pot of chowder tonight, and it's the best part, cooking for other people. That's why I love cooking so much.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us today. I had so much fun with everybody. I'm reading all of this.
All right.
Danielle. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing too, and thanks for coming. Oh, Colleen Dutton said, I have discovered Dawn Power Wash. Yes, and that is amazing stuff. It will eat through things. I love it too.
Oh yeah.
For sure. And baking soda to clean burned pots. Also, I think we did have baking soda that was utilized along with the vinegar. Yes.
I did that on my Calphalon, and I ruined the pan.
So I was going to say, you got to be careful because vinegar can
finish off.
For sure. So you got to kind of research what surface you have. Don't do that for everything.
Yep.
You got to be really careful. Even on an enamel pot, you can take the finish off your pot. 100%. Very good. I've never seen how chowder was made before. Oh, good. I'm so glad. And I hope you'll make it, and I hope you'll enjoy it. And you can say it's like a secret family recipe, because it really is. But now not so secret, now on our YouTube channel. Exactly.
Well, we'll be eating well.
Yes. I hope everybody enjoys it. It's been a lot of fun to be with you all today. Thanks for coming. And for those of you that couldn't join us synchronously that may be watching this later, I hope that we answered all your questions, but I hope that you enjoy your chowder, and we're looking forward to seeing you for our next Slice and Dice.